Students on Reddit, what made you hate a teacher? In 4th grade we couldn't call rulers rulers because he's the only ruler in this room and you had to call them measuring sticks. My mom is bound to bed most of the time, and one time I forgot my glasses and my mom couldn't bring them to school and my teacher made fun of me and her for it. I made her job a living hell after that, but still pisses me off to this day. He lost my book report and said I never handed it in, so I had to redo it. Twice this happened, and the second time I recorded me handing it in. Edit. Okay, so I know this isn't that big for most of you, but this tripled my karma THX so much. His was 7th grade. We were doing our unit on Jewish history, the religious side. After we did the test on the subject, and I got my test back, I had gotten a D. Most of the questions were about things like kosher and specific holidays. Here's the issue. I'm Jewish. I've been celebrating Jewish holidays and keeping kosher my entire life. It appeared that this teacher did not know anything on the subject. We wouldn't have known that, because instead of actually teaching, the teacher would just make us read from the book. For example, one question was, what is another name for Rosh Hashanah? The correct answer on this question would be Feast of Trumpets. It could also be Jewish New Year, but that wasn't an option. I selected Feast of Trumpets. He marked it wrong and said that the correct answer is Feast of Tabernacles. That is blatantly incorrect. The Feast of Tabernacles is Sukkot and comes after Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah happens before Yom Kippur. When I confronted him about this, he said the results were final. I took it to the counselor, she did nothing. Then I showed my mom. She was livid. She basically threatened to take it higher up the chain until both of them got fired. That history teacher got fired, because apparently that was not the first time he had done some bullshit like that. My grade also changed because they had the new teacher redo the grades on that test. She literally gave everyone on the cheerleading squad as regardless of effort. She was the squad's faculty sponsor, and everyone else sees regardless of effort. Twice I decided to test this. Once I did the minimal effort, C. Once I put upwards of 40 hours into a single 30-minute presentation, slideshow, charts, citations, oral presentation, C+. Reminds me of my sophomore English teacher, also coach. He was working on his master's and was writing his paper on the positive impact that sports have on grades. I had quit football after having a heat stroke. It was only a month or so into the school year, but after I quit, my grade in English dropped basically a full letter grade. I, with my dad's help for proofreading, basically called him out in an email saying that his thesis was wrong and threatened to write the university he was getting his master's at to get his research thrown out. Probably wouldn't work, but the next week all my grades were back up where they were pre-quitting football. I had a teacher in high school who would require us to participate in class 30 times each quarter for points, and the only way you would get a participation point would be if she called on you. She would only call on the same 10 kids and I always had trouble getting points. She would always tell me to raise my hand more so I would get credit. So I did. Whenever I raised my hand she would never call on me, so I was effed because the only way I could get points was if she called on me, but she never would. She also had favorites because one time we were talking about books we enjoyed reading so far in HS, and this one girl, who my teacher loved, talked about a book she read in middle school and she got a participation point for her comment. It was chill, so I then raised my hand and she finally called on me. I talked about a book I read in middle school I enjoyed also, and my teacher was like, you have to stay on task, we aren't talking about middle school, and I got no points for my comments. It was high-key annoying and I really didn't like her. My tennis coach is, well, kinda nice. Great tennis coach. Terrible biology teacher. Our entire team knows about it even though none of us have taken her class. My best friend has been really quiet for as long as I've known him and as long as his parents have brought him into existence, and the teacher would make up participation points and give him a 0 every time. She said, if you don't have the money to buy the book I wrote and will be using this class, you should go to a different major. The college I went was free and we had no obligation of buying the bitch's book. Had a female history teacher in 7th grade who would give the cute boys shoulder massages and comment on how handsome they were. There were a few couches in the back of the classroom that we would sometimes sit on and around while the teacher would read us historical accounts of some past event, and she would invite the cute boys to sit next to her with her arms around them, resting her hand on their upper thigh. She would go out of her way to make them blush, and then comment on their red faces like it was some game. At the time it was strange and a little weird to watch, but I didn't really think too much about it. But looking back now as an adult, she was way over the line. When growing up I suffered with dyslexia in a huge way. I had a teacher who took this as me having a major mental disability like extreme Downs or autism. I grew hate deeper than words are able to describe for this person. I acted out on it one day when he walked up to my desk, bent over and put both of his hands on his knees like a father talking to a toddler, and asked me in a very condescending tone, insert first name, "Do you know what a diorama is?" I cracked him across the side of his head with my textbook. I got suspended, but it was fully worth it, because it opened an investigation against the teacher which resulted in termination. This story falls a bit out of the topic, but I've been wanting to tell that story for a long time, so here we go. My teacher in 5th grade would complain about everything I did, and only me. There were 20 kids disturbing class, she would call me out and argue only with me. I got 9 out of 10 in a test? She would say I should have got a 10. She would expect that I did everything perfect. So my rage for her would increase more and more with each day. One day she was telling a story to the class about a time she was pregnant, that she always dreamed about having a child of her own, but the child was born dead. While she was telling the story the whole time she was staring at me, so I felt uncomfortable and laid my head on the table. She instantly lost and started screaming at me, saying she was opening herself and the least I could do is pay attention. That was my last bit of patience gone, so I cursed her of all the names I knew at that age. After the exchange she run out the door crying and I thought I was fucked. Turns out she never said a word about that to anyone, so I was cool with it. Finally the year ends and the next year I never see her or hear about her again. That until last year when one of my cats gave birth to 4 dead kitties. Then my mom starts telling me about the day I was born there was this lady who also gave birth the same day to a dead baby. My mom tells me that this lady would come in and visit her at the hospital and look at me with sad eyes as if she was jealous. My mom says that when I was 2 weeks old that same lady came to her house and asked my mom to adopt me, saying she would give me a better life. My mom was poor, this lady was rich, and so on. Then it clicks in. I asked my mom the name of this lady, and of course it was my teacher from 5th grade. And all the interactions I had with her started to make a little more sense, but I still don't know what to think of it. My art teacher told me art wasn't for me and gave me bad grades for every reason. I wasn't creative enough, I didn't use enough colors, I used too many colors, I took too long, I rushed, I was sloppy, I didn't draw it, when I did. Absolutely everything she could critique she would critique harshly. This was between grades 7 and 9. I grew to hate art, since I was obviously naturally crap at it. I now get paid to do art, but I lost years of confidence and practice because a teacher convinced me I had absolutely no ability or chance to grow whatsoever. My parents recently told me she hated my older brother and she projected that onto me and my siblings rather harshly, but I was the only one that really took it to heart because I was really artistic and she stomped it out of me rather hard. Thanks for watching Team Astro, make sure to like our video and share it with your friends. Also the most important thing is to subscribe. Fun fact before you leave. A single cloud can weigh more than 1 million pounds.